Coming up on Midco Motorsports, the annual celebration of sprint cars is underway in Knoxville. We've got a complete recap of the 24th annual 360 Nationals, as well as the Capitani Classic. Brad Seng strengthens his bid for another late models championship with an improbable run at River Cities. Find out if it was enough to keep him on top of the standings. All that plus the long-lasting legacy of Lou Kennedy Sr., who's still making an impact at the track more than 40 years after his retirement. The green flag drops down. For 10 days, the eyes of race fans from all over the world are once again focused on Iowa's Knoxville Raceway. How's everybody doing? I'm Jay Elson, and this is Midco Motorsports. Well, it all got started last week with the 24th annual 360 Nationals. 102 cars entered this year's event, with each driver vying for the $10,000 grand prize and the right to be called a Knoxville Nationals champion. Nasty start to preliminary night one. Ryan Kitchen takes a rough ride in turn one. Ugly wreck. Kitchen, though, was uninjured. Start of the 20-lap main event, Knoxville regular Davey Heskin sprints to the front in the 56. Fast forward to the final lap, Heskin being chased by Jason Johnson. The 41 makes a bid going into turn three, but Heskin stays right on the back bumper of the slower car and hangs on for the win. It's his first ever in the 360 division at Knoxville. Heskin, Johnson, and Tony Bruce Jr. made up Thursday's top three. Knoxville's 360 points leader Joe Beaver came in fourth, followed by Harwood, North Dakota's Lee Gross. On night two, Grand Forks' Mark Dobmeyer was on the pole for the main event. The 13 settles into the top spot off the start. Hard hit in the middle of the race. Alan Ambers spun in turn one, leaving Jack Dover with nowhere to go. Ambers was sent to the hospital for observation. When the race resumed, Sammy Swindell had the car to beat. After taking the lead from Dobmeyer on lap 9, the one car fends off a final challenge from the 13 5 laps later and cruises the rest of the way. Swindell takes the qualifying feature win, his fourth career victory in the 360 division at Knoxville. The rest of Friday's top five was loaded with Knoxville regulars. Dobmeyer took the runner-up spot with Brian Brown coming in third. Ian Madsen and Bronson Mason were fourth and fifth, respectively. That brings us to Saturday's big show. Pole setter Brian Brown pulls away from the field at the drop of the green flag, and that was as close as it would get. Green Valley, Missouri native put on quite a show, slices through lap traffic here as he builds a 2-second lead. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Brian Blackjack Brown dominates as he collects that $10,000 payday and his first 360 Nationals crown. Let's take a look at your final leaderboard. Brown followed across the line by Sam Hafertape Jr. and Sammy Swindell. Dobmeyer ran well all weekend, but finishes just off the podium in fourth. Terry McCarroll checked in eighth. Well, with the big 360 event now in the books, the 410 sprint cars officially moved into the spotlight on Sunday. We've got highlights from the final tune-up for the Knoxville Nationals next.
Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Butler Machinery.
The newest edition of the Knoxville Nationals calendar is actually a very important piece. Held on the Sunday before the Knoxville Nationals, the Capitani Classic, named for longtime race director Ralph Capitani, provides one final chance to turn some laps ahead of the big event. And Sunday, 71 drivers took advantage of that opportunity. Sibling rivalry shines through early on as Ian Madsen blocks the line of his brother and fellow front row starter Kerry in turn one. Justin Henderson uses the opening to briefly grab the lead, only to see Ian charge back to regain that top spot before the end of lap one. And from that point forward, it was all about the 18. Ian Madsen becomes the third different driver and the first Australian to win the Capitani Classic.
I've been fortunate enough to have a few front row starts here lately, and I know you just got to make the best of them, and it's still easy to lose them from the front row as well.
Sunday's win was Madsen's second in as many weeks at Knoxville, and that's moved him into the lead in the chase for the Knoxville Championship Cup. With 1 points race remaining, Madsen owns an 88-point advantage on Henderson. Terry McCarl, meanwhile, drops 2 spots to third. Madsen can secure his first track championship with a solid showing during the Knoxville Championship Cup Series Finals on Saturday, August 23rd. For now, though, his focus is entirely on the 54th annual FVP Knoxville Nationals. These were supposed to get underway on Wednesday, but rain washed out round 1 of qualifying. They're supposed to make that up tonight, but with more rain in the forecast, nothing is certain. They'll get it done eventually, though, and we'll have a complete recap of the event for you coming up next Thursday night. In South Dakota, it was the night of 1,000 stars at Houston Speedway. Nice paydays available for all classes. We start, as always, with the hobby stocks. The 44 of Chad Coonard held the lead early on, but after a restart, Dylan Fitzpatrick pilots his 38S past Coonard on the inside. Fitzpatrick kept it there until late in the race. 2 to go. Dustin Gulbranson shows why he's the guy to beat in this class. He gets around Fitzpatrick and drives on for his 6th win of the season.
It's always good to race against guys like Coonard and Fitzpatrick. You know that you can run side by side with them without tearing your door off, and you can run close together, and you just trust them, and it makes the racing a lot more fun when you can do that.
Gulbranson has 4 more wins than anyone else in this class, but is leading the standings just 4 points over Zach Olivier. Olivier came in 3rd on Sunday, his 11th top 5 finish in 11 races at Houston's. On to the B-Mods now, where it's another 6-car, that of Dustin Cruz, leading the pack off the start, but he wouldn't stay out front for long. A couple laps later, points leader Coulter Deutsch throws the slider between turns 1 and 2 and gets past Cruz on the bottom. And Deutsch continues his incredible season with his 7th win at Houston's. Not a lot of guys have been able to catch Deutsch in 2014, and that's reflected in the standings. His lead now 38 points over Ryan Walker. Defending B-Mods champ Nick Van Bell is 4th overall. The street stocks were up next, and it was points leader Darren Cordles moving up from his number 3 starting spot to take the early lead. Meanwhile, Gary Brown Jr., who started 7th, was working his way through the pack. 22 would test Cordles late, but is unable to make the pass. The 11K holds off Brown to claim his 6th checkered flag.
Me and Gary have raced against each other first and second, I don't know, a lot this year. And, you know, I'd finished second to him 2 in a row, and I felt like I had the faster car one of them nights. And tonight he probably had the faster car and I had the line. So I guess it all evens out.
No surprise here as Cordell sees his cushion balloon to 54 points in the late model street stock standings. We did see a little movement behind him, though, as defending champion Gary Brown Jr. moves into a tie for second with Sean Taylor. Cordles and Brown, by the way, have now accounted for 10 of the 11 wins in the division this season. In the micro sprint, Skylar Prohaska filled in for Bill Bowles in the 12B, but he drove it like he owned it. Jackson Speedway's reigning 360 champ leads from green to checkered, notching his first career win at Houston's.
I knew there was going to be a lot of fast cars coming, and after I got in front, it was just hit my marks and be smooth.
Prohaska's victory helps Bowles close the gap on the leaderboard. He's now trailing Brandon Bicey by just 5 points. Greg Gunderson, Trey Thiesenbitz, and Elliot Amdahl make up the rest of the top 5. With the 410s focused on Knoxville, the 360 championship sprints provided the night's main event, and it's Dusty Ballinger opening up the big lead early on. Things got a little tighter once the 2D came up on lap traffic, and on lap 8, Eric Lutz gets past Ballinger for the lead on the inside of turn 4. Ballinger responds 2 laps later while Lutz hits a roadblock. He makes contact with Matt Zebarth, causing a 4-car pileup in turn 4, and that was going to be all Ballinger would need. He leads 23 of the 25 laps and heads to victory lane for the first time this season at Houston's.
he got into some lap cars there right when he got by me, so it kind of gave us a lead back, and the race was just ours from there. It was mine to lose, so we just kept her out front and kept our nose clean and brought home the victory.
With just 4 appearances at Huset's this season, Ballinger is not a factor in the chase for the track championship. Tommy Barber, however, certainly is. The 75 finished 3rd on Sunday and remains comfortable at the top of the table. Barber is 40 points better than everybody. That's the biggest advantage among the 6 division leaders. Well, Brad Seng had to work a little harder at River City Speedway in Grand Forks on Friday. Find out why when Midco Motorsports rolls on.
Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Butler Machinery.
Well, there's been a lot of great racing at River City Speedway this season, but the best battle to watch all summer without question has been in the late models division. Coming into last Friday's show, the top 4 spots in the standings were separated by a total of 15 points. Brad Seng held the lead with 2-time defending track champion Joey Peterson hot on his heels. More on that in a bit. Picking up with the street stocks. Lap 3, leader James Meager gets loose coming out of turn 4, setting up a 4-wide race down the front chute. Meager loses out as he goes over the edge on turn 1. He'd end up finishing 12th. On the restart, watch the 18 of points leader Mike Anderson. Shoots into the lead where he would stay for the final 12 laps. Anderson picks up his 4th win of the season in Grand Forks to extend his edge in the standings.
Tacked up a little bit, so it's kind of hammered down all the way around it, but I thought it was a good race.
Anderson now holds a 19-point lead on Ryan Johnson, with Travis Robertson standing 3rd. To the Midwest Modifieds, where last week's feature winner Matt Scow had the pole and had command. That changes on lap 13 as Dale Kraling finds something in the middle of the racetrack and he moves in front. The two would swap the top spot a few times during the final laps, but it would be Kraling edging Scow by 0.3 of a second to pick up his first Bullring feature win of the season.
It came down to that last caution. I didn't know. I kept picking the bottom. I figured that was coming in 1 and 2 was preferred line, but I screwed up. Shaw got underneath me, and then I tried, I got to try the high line, and it stuck, and here we are talking about it now.
Neither Kraling or Scow are in contention for a championship this season. Both guys well behind the leader, Hickson, North Dakota's Tyler Peterson. The late models saw River City's Hall of Famer Tom Corcoran in the lead early on. His car was a little dinged up from a hit he took during his heat race, but he'd have bigger problems on lap 12. With the race already under caution, the T1 shuts down, and Corcoran would be done for the night. That helped the case of Brad Seng. The 12S started last after coming in light on the scale following his heat race, but that wouldn't stop him. Seng goes worst to first for the win.
The whole field, to be honest, any one of them can win any night, so this is my kind of racetrack, and I guess the stars line tonight.
Despite the victory, Seng actually drops a spot in River City's ultra-competitive late model standings. He's now a single point behind 2-time defending champion Joey Peterson. But how about this? 4 guys, Dustin Strand and Mike Balkin included, separated now by just 9 points. Finally, we go to the Outlaw Sprints. Picking up on lap 8, pole setter and race leader Trent Stengel watches the 8 of Casey Mack make its move down low to snag the lead. And from that point forward, it was pretty clear that this night belonged to Mack. He was just too fast, battles through 5 restarts, and cruises to his first win of the season.
We got one at the end here last year, and just as the season gets longer and longer, I think it puts a little bit more pressure on everybody just because you make sure you want to win at least once. I always do in Grand Forks, just hometown, and feels good to win here no matter what.
Mack still very much in contention for the Outlaw Sprints Championship at River Cities as he closes now to within 16 points of Austin Pierce. Well, Lou Kennedy Sr. hasn't raced in more than 40 years, but his stamp is still all over the field at River Cities. That story is coming up next.
Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Butler Machinery.
Legendary sprint car driver Lou Kennedy Sr. got his start in racing around 1960. And while the exact date is unclear, the result is not. Kennedy drove his 1959 Corvette to a win in his first ever feature. It was the first of many. Now 75, the Winnipeg, Manitoba native hasn't raced in over 40 years. But as Midco SN's Darren Lean tells us, Kennedy can still be found at the track every week, watching his passion live on through a host of familiar faces.
So I'm sitting in the grandstand, somebody says, is enough of your family here to make it entertaining for you? I says, yeah, you bet. I says, the four of them here tonight, Thomas Kennedy, Lou Kennedy, Mike Balkin, and Amber Balkin.
They are a family that truly has racing in their blood.
When I was racing, they all came with me, all the time. All the time. And it didn't matter. Okay, Lou was born August 31st. He was racing the next week with me. So it's bred into them, I guess, if you want to say that.
I tell people on the racing side of things, my dad isn't the first generation of a racer. He's actually the second generation of a racer because his parents were horse racers, and his mother, which my grandmother, was a world-renowned female horse trainer. So, you know, he grew up at a horse farm with a racetrack around there, but it was for 1 horsepower at a time. You know, not when he got started, just back, must be 55 years now he's been doing this. My math is correct, so he's been doing it a long time. He's mostly going to be thinking about driving a race car when we bury him, so.
Kennedy's son, Lou Jr., has been racing for 32 years, collecting a number of sprint car championships, and at 51 years old is one of the top drivers in the Midwest, along with his son, Thomas, or as his family calls him, TJ.
You know, TJ's been racing since he was 8 years old, go-karts. I didn't race anything until I was 19. You know, we're 32 years later and I'm still doing it. So I guess you can start early, but who says you got to stop early? So that's why I'm still doing it, still having fun, and I don't see any sight where I'm going to slow down much anytime soon.
Growing up, you know, when I go-kart raced, my grandpa or my dad would help me out with how to run the line on the racetrack. They would kind of make an oval shape diagram on the ground in the dirt with a screwdriver, you know, or a piece of paper, and then they would show me the line that I would have to take on the racetrack and where not to take and where I was going when I shouldn't have been. And so yeah, it's been a huge help growing up, and it's a huge family bonding ordeal when it comes to being in the racing world. You have you have friends, family come out, and just, you know, sometimes it can be very hectic. Sometimes there could be a lot of fights, but in the end, you all kiss and make up, and then you start off another new weekend.
Mike Balkin is a 31-year racing veteran who has also put in time in a sprint car, but is now racing late models. He joined the Kennedy family when he married Lou Sr.'s daughter, Kim.
It's funny, you know, we all started racing as our separate family and met through racing at the racetrack, and that's how I met my wife, obviously, and we've always raced together. TJ is just an awesome, aggressive, good driver. He's young, but he's very experienced. And Lou, I'm really impressed for, you know, him and I are similar in age, and I used to race against him, and I'm done with those cars, and for him to wheel it and doing as well as he's doing right now, I watched him a couple weeks ago, man, he looked like he was 30 years ago, so that's impressive, but there again, he works at it. If you look at him, if his car broke down, he could probably pick it up and carry it the last 150 feet and still win. It's funny how our kids just, it's not something we push them into, they really wanted to do it, so they've taken over the passion and the heart and desire that it takes to do it, and we're all doing it together.
I, grew up watching my dad. He was always number 10, and so when I started racing go-karts, I was number 10, and just kind of carried that throughout. Can't really imagine having another number.
Mike's daughter, 22-year-old Amber Balkin, is in her rookie season driving a 410 sprint car, making the transition from lightning sprints.
Yeah, well, I've grown up in the racing. Since I was 2 weeks old, I was at the track, and I've always loved it. And since I was a little girl, I always wanted to race sprint cars. All I knew was going to the racetrack every weekend. My friends would be going to the lake or doing whatever they do, and I'd be down the road with my family racing. And it's just what I've grown up doing. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I'd lose my mind, probably. I'm pretty happy with my progress so far as a rookie. My goals for this year was to win the 2014 Rookie of the Year for the NOSA Point Series. Other than that, I want to finish top 10 in points. More long-term goals. By year 5, I'd like to be in the World of Outlaws. That is my main goal, ultimately, to make a career out of this.
I'm enjoying watching what she's doing. I do get nervous about it. I never get nervous about my own racing, but when it's your kid, it's a different deal. But you know, it's just part of our lives. It's what we do, and if you were somebody from the outside, sat down and looked at this on your first night and said these people are crazy, I'd probably tend to agree with you. But we've been crazy for a long time, and we will probably continue to be that way.
You know, once you get them going, you know, it's kind of let them go. You know, let them make their own mistakes and learn from that. If they ever wanted my advice on something, I was always there. You know, sometimes too much, maybe.
And that again was Darren Lean reporting. Now don't think for a second that Lou Sr. has slowed down. For his 70th birthday, Kennedy was given the opportunity to drive a wingless sprint car in the advanced class at the Corey Cruiseman School in Ventura, California. He completed 30 laps and says he had the fastest time out of everyone there. Well, we've reached the white flag. We'll wrap things up with a look at your weekend schedule next.
Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Butler Machinery.
Here's a look at your Midco Motorsports calendar. Enjoy the races. We'll see you back here next week for the season finale of Midco Motorsports.